This photo is the most anxious photo ever captured. The shaky photograph shows a floundering young man crawling his way onto the nightmarish Normandy beach, but what it doesn't show are the monstrous rounds of the MG-42s ripping apart the Allied forces. The feeling evoked, given the historical context of the photo, is only a fraction of the amount of anxiety created for these men that day. Robert Capa, the fearless photographer who took this photo, has many others like it from that day, but before we dive in too deep about it, we must learn more about this historic cameraman. Born in 1913 in Budapest, Robert Capa, who was born with the name Andre Friedman, grew up as a normal Jewish teenager. However, due to political repression when he was a teen, he moved to Berlin, Germany to pursue photography at Berlin University. After school, when working for a German photographic agency, Dupont, the Nazi regime came into power, which meant Friedman, a Jew, decided to leave Germany to move to Paris for a brighter future. Around this time, Friedman and his girlfriend came up with this great idea to create this persona of a great American photographer, Robert Capa. They both created images under this pseudonym until Friedman eventually manifested the disguise and changed his name to Robert Capa forever. The name had quite a significance to Friedman, however, Capa being the Hungarian translation for the word shark, a nickname for Andre. His girlfriend also had changed her name, and the two began their new lives together, and sometime later were reported to be engaged. Robert Capa began his publishing of photos in 1932 of extremely intense photos of Leon Trotsky making a speech in Copenhagen on the meaning of the Russian Revolution. From 1936 to 1939, Capa worked in Spain, photographing the Spanish Civil War. It was during that war that Capa took the photo now called The Falling Soldier, purported to show the death of a Republican soldier. The photo was published in magazines in France and then by Life magazine and Picture Post. The authenticity of the photo was later questioned, with evidence including other photos from the scene suggesting it was staged. Picture Post, a pioneering photojournalism magazine published in the UK, had once described then 25-year-old Capa as the greatest war photographer in the world. The next year, in 1937, Taro, Capa's lover, died when the motor vehicle in which she was traveling in collided with an out-of-control tank. After a break and much grief, Capa accompanied the then journalist and author Ernest Hemingway to photograph the war, which Hemingway would later describe in his novel For Whom the Bell Tolls. Life magazine published a variety of different articles about Hemingway and his time in Spain, along with numerous photos to accompany it by Capa. Despite this, many of the Spanish Civil War film rolls were lost, however, but in 2007, 3 boxes containing 4,500 35mm negatives were discovered in Mexico, and in 2014, Trisha Ziv directed a film about those images titled The Mexican Suitcase. Following the Spanish War, Capa would spend a short stint in the Chinese city in Hankou to document the resistance to the Japanese invasion, and these images would also go on to be published in Life magazine. After this, Capa moved to New York to once again avoid Jewish persecution. Because of this, he quickly got work in New York and was sent to various parts of the European theater on assignments, being deemed as the only non-American photographer. He would be planted in Sicily and Naples especially, before arriving at one of the most hectic locations he would ever visit. On June 6, 1944, Capa's greatest photos would be made. On this day, more popularly known as D-Day, Capa stormed the beaches with fearless American troops, firing away over 100 photos, but only 11 making it back intact. Supposedly, the photo assistant at the lab had melted 3 complete rolls of film, but I have seen some historians refute this claim. Of these 11 photos, commonly referred to as the Magnificent 11, are some of the rawest photographs I've ever seen. Made with top-of-the-line Contex cameras and 50mm lenses, the equipment wasn't enough to save said photos or make up the complete overtaking of emotion seen in the photos. Capa's trembling hands are credited to the slight out-of-focus look to nearly all of the photos, which in normal photography would be a factor to quickly deem if a photo is good or not, but in these sets, the shakiness adds to it. It completely exemplifies the feelings Capa and the soldiers were having, literally on death's door, trying their very best to keep their cool and follow orders to survive. The way Robert Capa's editor back in America, John Morris, describes the effort explains it well and much better than I ever could.
It's interesting, and I didn't think of it at the time, but there's one picture that stands out, and that's the picture that shows clearly the head of an American soldier as he approaches the shore. It never occurred to me until later that in order to take that picture, Capa had to get ahead of that soldier and turn his back on the action, which is quite remarkable, and also is an indication of Capa's courage. I think that photo stands out because it humanizes the invasion. There is a single man walking ashore. The Omaha Beach story as a whole was perhaps the most memorable in my entire lifetime. And I've been privileged to work through many important stories of the 20th century.
This idea of slightly out of focus, Capa would even coin as the title to his autobiography later down the road. Capa would go on to capture some of the most famous World War II photos until the conclusion of the World War. Following that, he traveled through post-war Soviet Union with his friend and famous American writer John Steinbeck, capturing photos that would later be used in Steinbeck's book titled A Russian Journal. In 1947, Capa founded the cooperative venture Magnum Photos in Paris with Henri Cartier-Bresson, William Vandevert, David Seymour, and George Roger. It was a cooperative agency to manage work for and by freelance photographers, and developed a reputation for the excellence of its photojournalists. Today, Magnum is one of the largest and most sought-after photo agencies. In 1952, he became the president of Magnum Photos. After that, he publicly stated that he would be done photographing war and was to work on some more calming projects for Magnum. Despite this, while traveling to Japan for a Magnum exhibition, Life magazine had convinced him to work on an assignment in Southeast Asia, where the French had been fighting for 8 years in the First Indochina War. On the 25th of May 1954, the regiment was passing through a dangerous area under fire when Capa decided to leave his Jeep and go up on the road to photograph the advance. Capa was killed when he stepped on a landmine near the road. He was 40 at the time of his death. I hope you all enjoyed this video today. I know it is quite a different venture from some of the other videos and definitely some of the educational videos that I've done on this channel, but I really wanted to highlight some of Robert Capa's story and certainly his photos, as I think that they're some of the most important historical photos, at least in American history, in the past 100 years. Not only was it so important for almost American propaganda to get Americans to buy in, to understand the legitimacy and scope of World War II, but to do it in such a beautiful and eloquent way, especially when dealing with such gruesome and just ridiculous subject matter, is honestly just unbelievable. On top of that, I think his story, coming from obviously a very low socioeconomic class, especially at this time period, with all the suppression that he would have endured, really says a lot, and I think can be relatable for anyone coming from a difficult background or being less privileged. Despite all his shortcomings that he was born with, let's say, or had to face as a young man, he made it out of it and still found work and made the most of his life. On top of that, I think kind of the business aspect that him and his girlfriend had, understanding that because of their socioeconomic class, it would be much easier to grow a name and grow a career in photography, being this American photographer. I think it's just really resourceful. Obviously, it's really sad and honestly just depressing, thinking that that was the means they had to go to, but extremely resourceful that they were able to come up with a plan to not only get them out of it, but to show the world their images and what's going on, and being such a great photojournalist for the 20th century. In all honesty, I'm pretty surprised there hasn't been any type of film made about Robert Capa. I think the story writes itself, from being a child, going through all of his trials and tribulations, going into World War II, and then all the photos he captured along the way, with the stories that go with it, is just literally like a script made out of Hollywood. So maybe one day we'll see that. Maybe I'll get to direct it. We'll see. So let me know down in the comments what you thought. Otherwise, until next time, thank you guys for watching. Stay shooting, stay safe. Peace out. I'll see you soon.